They formed a circle of betrayal, a circle where whispers became weapons and smiles hid daggers, a circle where those you trusted the most locked arms, not to protect you, but to plot your downfall. They didn't just walk away from you, they joined forces against you, not because you were weak, but because you were chosen, not because you failed them, but because you frightened them. You carried something they could never manufacture: favor, anointing, purpose. You see, betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from those who had access to your heart, the ones who dined at your table, the ones who said, "I'm with you," the ones who held your secrets like sacred scrolls, only to weaponize them in your absence. They crafted their circle like it was an altar built with lies, with jealousy, with fear, and with insecurity. But what they failed to calculate was that you were not standing alone. You were surrounded by the presence of God. You didn't just survive the betrayal, you were preserved in the midst of it. Because when God assigns a purpose to your life, no conspiracy can override his sovereignty. They whispered in corners, but God sat on the throne. They tried to exile you, but God was elevating you. They created a circle of betrayal, but God drew a circle of protection around you. And when the time was right, he shattered their conspiracy in front of their eyes, not behind their backs, not in secret, but openly, publicly, undeniably. You didn't have to clap back. You didn't have to retaliate. You didn't have to defend your name. God did it. He prepared a table for you in the presence of your enemies, not in their absence, because vindication is not about revenge, it's about revelation. God wanted them to see what they could not destroy. He wanted them to witness what they tried to bury, rise up in resurrection power. And that's what you are: resurrected, elevated, unshaken, preserved by purpose, and wrapped in divine fire. When they betrayed you, they thought it was over, but God said, "Now I will begin." They thought your isolation would break you, but it became your consecration. They thought your silence meant defeat, but it was actually strategy. God was building your next move in secret. He was developing your character in the cave. He was molding your destiny in the dark, because greatness is never born on platforms, but in obscurity. And when the circle was complete and their mockery was loud, God moved in. He didn't just stop their plan, he exposed it. He didn't just protect your name, he promoted it. And now the very mouths that cursed you are being forced to acknowledge that you were covered the entire time. That's what happens when you walk in purpose. That's what happens when God's hand is on your life. No circle formed against you shall stand, not even if it's made of people you once loved. Because God doesn't need numbers to fight for you. He doesn't need armies. He only needs truth. And when truth stands up, lies fall flat. You are still standing, not because you were never wounded, but because healing is in your bones. Restoration is in your DNA. Grace picked you up where betrayal dropped you. And while they celebrated your silence, God was scripting your comeback. They thought they had canceled you, but God was just correcting your circle. Some people had to be removed, not because you hate them, but because God heard conversations you didn't. He saw text messages you never read. He witnessed intentions they kept hidden behind hollow hugs. So stop mourning the betrayal. Stop trying to re-enter circles God already shattered. When God breaks a circle, it's because it was built on broken motives. You don't need to fight for a seat in spaces God has already cleared. Their rejection was his direction. Their exit was your elevation. Their gossip was your graduation. And their betrayal was the very thing God used to prove that his calling on your life cannot be canceled by human manipulation. Let them watch, let them stare, let them whisper, because now they can't deny the glow, they can't deny the oil, they can't deny the power on your life. You've outlived the lies, you've outgrown the bitterness, and now you are rising on the wings of divine vengeance with the wind of heaven behind you. You were never meant to fit in their circle. You were designed to stand out, chosen, marked, appointed for such a time as this. Don't chase the circle. Don't explain your healing. Don't water down your anointing just to make others comfortable. You are a testimony in motion, a divine disruption, a walking reminder that no betrayal is strong enough to break a destiny birthed by God Himself. So lift your head, dry your tears, stop trying to make sense of what was never meant to stay. God shattered it, not to punish you, but to protect you. He saw what you couldn't. He loved you enough to end what would have ended you. And now your life is a stage for His glory. They saw you fall, but they're about to watch you fly. They saw the circle form, but now they'll witness heaven respond. God shattered the betrayal. And He did it in front of them. Because when you're chosen, your vindication will be visible. Your enemies won't just hear about it, they'll see it. Because when God steps in, He doesn't just fix it, He finishes it. And now your story has become a sermon. Your pain has birthed power. Your rejection has become revelation. This isn't the end. This is the emergence. Walk boldly. Speak truth. Rise with purpose, because they formed a circle to destroy you, but God turned it into a platform to announce you. Betrayal never begins with strangers. It never starts from afar. It rises from the very circle you trusted, the very voices that once cheered for you, the very people you never thought would turn their backs. That's what makes betrayal so devastating, because it doesn't come from the outside. It rises from within. When they formed a circle of betrayal around you, they didn't come with swords in hand. No, they came with smiles, with shared memories, with words of support that were laced with silent resentment. And the danger of betrayal is that it wears the face of friendship. It sounds like loyalty until it speaks behind your back. It looks like unity until the dagger is already in your spine. But here is the mystery most people miss. Betrayal is not proof that you are weak. It is confirmation that you are valuable. You don't betray someone who has no weight. You don't envy someone who is going nowhere. People don't form circles against mediocrity. They form circles against purpose. And when you carry divine favor, when there's oil on your name, when there's destiny in your steps, you become a target. Not because you've done wrong, but because you reflect what they cannot control. Your light agitates their shadows. Your obedience convicts their compromise. Your resilience exposes their insecurity. So instead of celebrating you, they secretly sabotage you. Instead of covering you, they conspire. And that's why betrayal hurts so deeply, because it comes from hands that once held you, voices that once blessed you, people you once prayed for. You weren't stabbed by your enemy. You were betrayed by your brother, your sister, your closest companion. Like David said in the Psalms, if it were an enemy, I could bear it. But it was you, my friend, my equal, the one who walked with me to the house of God. The pain of betrayal is not just the act itself, it's the collision between what they said and what they did. It's the realization that while you were defending them in rooms, they were slandering you in secret. While you were sacrificing for them, they were sabotaging you. But hear this clearly, betrayal is not your end. It's the evidence that purpose is alive in your life. The betrayal didn't happen because you were wrong. It happened because you were right. It didn't form because you were cursed. It formed because you were chosen. And chosen people will always attract counterfeit alliances. Wherever there is destiny, there will always be disruption. But what they didn't know, what they still don't understand, is that betrayal doesn't cancel God's plan. It fulfills it. What they meant for evil, God uses for your evolution. What they tried to block, God turns into a blessing. So don't internalize the betrayal. Don't let it become your identity. Don't let the actions of broken people break you. You are not what they did. You are what God destined. They formed a circle, yes, but they formed it around a person God had already anointed. They thought they could limit you. They thought they could isolate you. But God used their circle to push you into a new level of consecration. He allowed the circle not to destroy you, but to reveal who really belonged in your next chapter. That's why some people had to leave. That's why the circle closed itself off, because God was cleaning your circle. He was removing the leeches before you reached the promise. He was cutting ties not to hurt you, but to heal you. He heard the conversations you never did. He saw the betrayals before you ever sensed them. And because he loves you, he wouldn't allow you to carry dead weight into a destiny that demands purity. Sometimes God allows betrayal to break us away from attachments that looked loyal but were actually lethal. And though it hurts, it's holy, it's sacred, because your purpose is too important to be surrounded by snakes dressed as supporters. And while you cried over who left, God was rejoicing over who couldn't stay. While you mourned the betrayal, God was saying, now I can elevate you without sabotage. Now I can bless you without interference. The pain is real, but so is the process. And you must trust the process, because what you're going through is not just emotional, it's spiritual. You're being separated for something greater. You're being refined, not rejected. You're being set apart, not abandoned. And while it may feel like isolation, it's actually insulation. God is covering you. He's protecting what he placed inside you. And sometimes the only way to protect purpose is to allow betrayal to reveal what loyalty cannot fake. So instead of resenting the circle that betrayed you, thank God for the exposure. Thank him for the revelation. Thank him for not letting you stay blind to their intentions. Because when God removes someone, it's never without purpose. When he allows betrayal, it's never without a lesson. You learned who was real. You learned who was for you. And more than that, you learned how strong you really are. You discovered that your identity is not tied to approval, but to assignment. You found out that peace doesn't come from people, but from presence, God's presence. The betrayal marked a shift. It pushed you out of familiar places. It stripped you of dependency. It made you lean not on man, but on God. And now you're wiser, you're stronger, you're sharper, you see clearer, you discern deeper. You're not the same person they tried to break, because betrayal didn't destroy you, it birthed you. So let them talk, let them laugh, let them point fingers. But don't forget, they formed a circle of betrayal, but God surrounded you with grace. They left you bleeding, but God made you bloom. They thought the circle would keep you trapped, but God used it to release you. What they meant to be your prison became your platform. And the next time they see you, they won't recognize you. Not because you're hiding, but because you've healed. And healing looks good on you. Purpose fits you. Favor is your portion. And no circle formed against you shall prosper, because God is your defender, your deliverer, and your destiny keeper. So walk forward. Don't look back. The betrayal was real, but so is the blessing. And the same people who formed the circle will witness the glory that comes next. Let them watch, because the story is just beginning. And you, child of God, are just getting started. God doesn't elevate without exposing. Before he lifts you, he reveals what's hidden. Before he promotes you, he peels back the layers of people, places, and patterns that were quietly working against your purpose. Exposure is not God's punishment, it's his preparation. And sometimes what feels like betrayal is actually divine revelation. You prayed for increase, and God responded by tearing the mask off those around you. You asked him to guide you into your next season, and he responded by exposing the circle that couldn't go with you. Because what you don't see can hurt you, and God loves you too much to let the unseen destroy the destiny he placed within you. So when people turned their backs, when alliances formed in the dark, when lies started to circulate and conversations happened behind your name, don't think God was absent. Don't think he was silent. God was watching. And not only was he watching, he was allowing it. He was allowing the exposure to unfold, not to break your heart, but to break the illusion. You needed to see the truth, not for vengeance, but for vision. You couldn't carry false loyalty into your next level. You couldn't afford to drag hidden jealousy into your next dimension. The betrayal hurt, yes, but it revealed the snakes in the garden. Sometimes God lets the storm hit so you can see who holds the umbrella and who walks away. He allows the fire to rise, not to burn you, but to burn away what is not pure. Elevation always demands purification. You cannot go higher and remain tied to what was only meant to survive in your last season. And here's the truth many people miss. Every time God is about to take you somewhere greater, He will shake the room around you. He will test the voices in your life. He will reveal the motives in your circle, not because He wants to embarrass them, but because He wants to protect you. You are carrying something divine, something valuable, something heavy with purpose. And when you're pregnant with destiny, the people around you matter. Your atmosphere matters. Your inner circle must be consecrated, not contaminated. God is intentional with your associations. And before He opens the door, He ensures that the wrong people don't walk in with you. Because some betrayals are not setbacks. They are safeguards. Some exits are not losses. They are God's protection in disguise. The betrayal they orchestrated exposed their true colors, yes, but it also uncovered your strength. You found out who was loyal, and more importantly, you found out that God never left. While they gathered in secret, He was shielding you in silence. While they exchanged lies, He was building truth. He let them form their circle, not to destroy you, but to display His glory when it collapsed. Because what they built in secret could never match what God ordained in heaven. They thought you would break. They thought you would retaliate, but you stood still. And that's when God stepped in. He always steps in when you choose character over chaos, when you choose silence over slander, when you keep your heart pure, even when your name is being dragged through the dirt. He honors the posture of the righteous. And when your posture pleases Him, He promotes you beyond human logic. That's why exposure always comes before elevation, because God uses the pressure to test your response. Will you curse what He's using to cleanse you? Will you fight for connections He's trying to sever? Or will you trust that His pruning is proof of His promise? It's easy to cry when you're exposed to betrayal. It's easy to mourn what you thought was real. But in the kingdom, broken trust becomes divine strategy. Because what's exposed on the outside gives you a glimpse of what God is fixing on the inside. You needed to know who was for you. You needed to see the counterfeit before you walked into the real. And now that you've seen it, you're no longer deceived. That's deliverance. That's discernment. That's divine mercy. You see, exposure is not just about others. It's also about you. When people turned against you, it didn't just show you their character, it revealed yours. You found out that you could take a hit and not fall apart. You discovered the strength of your anointing. You learned how to walk in love even when surrounded by hatred. You realized that integrity isn't loud. It's consistent. And you learned that true power is not in retaliation. It's in restraint. God was watching how you handled it. He was listening to your words. He was testing your heart, not because He needed the information, but because He was shaping your readiness. The betrayal was your exam, and your promotion was on the other side of how you responded. And because you didn't bow to bitterness, because you didn't react in the flesh, because you chose righteousness over revenge, now the elevation is unavoidable. What they did in secret, God will now repay in public. And here's the beauty of God's justice. He doesn't just expose people. He exposes the lie. He unmasks the rumor. He reveals the truth. He clears your name. He restores your credibility. And when He does it, He makes sure the same people who watched you suffer will now watch you shine. Not because you begged for their attention, but because He wants His hand on your life to be undeniable. That's why exposure had to happen before elevation, because the story wouldn't hit the same without the storm. God will not elevate you beyond the level of your integrity, and He will not entrust greatness to someone who refuses to release the garbage of betrayal. So He lets it all rise to the surface. He lets the masks fall off. He lets the pain sting. And in that exposure, He creates space for healing, growth, wisdom, and divine clarity. You come out of it lighter, sharper, more aware. You're no longer emotionally entangled with people who don't honor your purpose. And now you're ready for the next dimension. So don't fear exposure. Don't resent the betrayal. Don't cry over the loss of what was never meant to stay. God used it all to prepare you. He used the circle they formed to shape the crown you're about to wear. The wounds were part of the process. The loneliness was part of the pruning. The heartbreak was part of the transformation. But the elevation, that's the promise. That's the reward. That's the result of trusting God even when it hurt. And now you're stepping into a season where what was hidden will be honored. What was lost will be restored. What was broken will be rebuilt. Because God never exposes without a plan to elevate. And because you endured the exposure with grace, get ready. He's about to lift you in a way no man can block, no circle can sabotage, and no betrayal can reverse. When God shatters something, it's never random. He doesn't move impulsively, and he doesn't destroy what he hasn't first examined. When God breaks a circle, when he disrupts an alliance, when he causes people to fall away or relationships to collapse, it's not because he's angry or punishing you. It's because he's protecting the purpose he planted in you. God sees the end from the beginning. He knows where you're going, even when you're unsure. And when something or someone is incompatible with that destination, he'll break the connection to preserve your calling. What you perceive as pain is actually divine precision. It might look like loss, but in the spirit, it's alignment. You were never meant to carry the weight of betrayal into the next season. You were never designed to drag unresolved trauma, half-hearted alliances, or secret enemies into a chapter meant to reveal your full identity. So when God shatters the circle, it's because the foundation was flawed. The people around you were not standing with you. They were standing near you. And proximity does not equal loyalty. Just because they were in your space doesn't mean they had your back. Just because they clapped doesn't mean they celebrated you. God sees the heart, and he will never allow false support to poison real destiny. Yes, it hurts when God removes people. Yes, it's painful when familiar voices go silent. Yes, it's confusing when the very ones who said they would always be there become strangers overnight. But in the midst of that pain is a powerful truth. God removes what cannot grow with you. He breaks circles that were secretly designed to break you. You may not have known what they were doing, but God did. He heard the conversations. He saw the intentions. He discerned the silent envy hiding behind fake love. And in his mercy, he shattered it before it could shatter you. You prayed for clarity, and God answered with disruption. You asked for protection, and God answered with exposure. You cried out for guidance, and God answered with separation. Because sometimes the only way God can answer your prayer is by removing what you're still trying to hold on to. He had to let it fall apart so you wouldn't fall into the trap. He had to let them leave so you could truly see who was for you. And the longer you live, the more you realize that every closed door was actually an act of grace. Every disconnection was an intervention. Every shattered circle was God saying, I won't let you settle for this. God breaks to rebuild. He tears down to establish. And what he breaks apart, he always replaces with something stronger, something holy, something aligned with his will for your life. But you have to trust the process. You have to let go of what he's removing. You have to stop trying to repair what he already condemned. Some circles were never meant to survive your elevation. They served a purpose for a season, but their time expired. And when you try to resurrect what God has already buried, you delay your own breakthrough. Let the broken pieces fall. Let the shattered glass remain where it fell. Stop picking up what God shattered on purpose. It's not your job to fix betrayal. It's not your responsibility to explain why people changed. It's your assignment to obey, to walk forward, to grow, to evolve, because what's ahead of you is too great for the distractions behind you. And when you keep looking back, you dishonor the future God fought to preserve. God shattered the circle to make room for something sacred. The broken relationships made space for divine connections. The betrayal exposed the need for stronger boundaries. The silence taught you the value of God's voice. What seemed like destruction was actually divine order. And now in hindsight, you can see it. If they had stayed, you wouldn't have grown. If they hadn't betrayed you, you wouldn't have prayed the way you did. If God hadn't broken the circle, you would still be sitting in a place too small for your future. Your Everything God does is intentional. Nothing is wasted. Not the tears, not the silence, not the loss. It's all being used. Every moment of confusion was cultivating your discernment. Every season of loneliness was deepening your intimacy with God. Every betrayal was training your spirit to depend not on people, but on purpose. And now that the circle is shattered, you are finally free, free to breathe, free to build, free to be who God called you to be without walking on eggshells, without shrinking to fit into spaces too insecure to handle your light. Don't try to glue the pieces back together. Some things must remain broken so you don't return to them. Some relationships must stay severed so your soul can heal. God's breaking was not an act of cruelty. It was a declaration of love. He shattered it to shift you. He broke the circle to open the gate. He ended what was familiar to birth what was divine. And though it hurt, it helped you. Though it burned, it refined you. Though it left you alone, it didn't leave you abandoned. God was always with you. He never left, even when they did. He never wavered, even when their loyalty crumbled. And while you questioned his silence, he was working behind the scenes. He was orchestrating a deliverance you couldn't see. He was breaking cycles passed down through generations. He was cutting you loose from limitations you thought were normal. And now, because of the shattering, you can walk into destiny unbound, unburdened, and undistracted. So lift your eyes. Wipe your tears. The broken circle is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your release. You're no longer surrounded by silent enemies. You're no longer carrying people who were never assigned to your purpose. You're stepping into clarity, into focus, into divine alignment. And the beauty of it all is that God didn't just shatter the circle. He did it in front of them. He made it visible. He allowed them to witness what they couldn't stop. Because when God moves, he moves with authority. He doesn't just remove, he reveals. And now they see what they lost. They see the favor they tried to tamper with. They see the grace they mocked. They see that the one they tried to bury has bloomed. Not in spite of the shattering, but because of it. You survived the breaking, you endured the betrayal, and now God is bringing you into the fullness of his plan. Keep walking, don't look back. The circle was shattered for a reason, and that reason is your freedom. When betrayal strikes publicly, it wounds deeply. It's one thing to be hurt in private, where your pain is hidden and your tears fall silently. But it's another thing entirely when the betrayal becomes a spectacle. When people talk, when rumors spread, when slander moves faster than truth, when the very people who smiled in your presence begin tearing your name apart behind your back, when circles form, not to support you, but to gossip about you, mock you, and paint you in a light that doesn't reflect who you really are. Public betrayal is humiliating. It tries to strip you of your dignity and rewrite your story without your consent. But here's the divine principle you must hold on to. When betrayal is public, vindication will be public too. Be public. God never lets public wounds go unhealed. He never allows his children to be disgraced without sending restoration. You see, when they conspired against you, they thought it was final. When they laughed at your pain, they thought you were finished. When they stood in that circle of betrayal, whispering your name in contempt, they had no idea they were setting the stage for a divine reversal. What they meant as a funeral, God marked as a birthing. What they intended as mockery, God destined as manifestation. And when God decides to respond, he doesn't do it in the shadows. He brings his glory right into the center of the circle that tried to break you. The same people who tried to ruin your reputation will be the ones who witness your restoration. The same mouths that slandered you will be forced to speak of your strength, not because you fought back, not because you defended yourself, but because you stood still and let God be your defender. You didn't retaliate when they lied. You didn't curse them when they rejected you. You chose to walk in integrity. You chose to stay silent while your name was dragged through the mud. And that silence became your strength. That silence became your offering, and God saw it all. He saw every word spoken in darkness. He heard every false accusation. He watched as they tried to discredit you. And while they were building a narrative, God was building a testimony. That's why you don't need to waste energy trying to explain yourself. You don't need to argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Let God do what only He can do. Because when He vindicates, He does it with power. He does it with clarity. He does it in such a way that no one can deny it was Him. Public vindication is not about embarrassing your enemies. It's about exalting God's faithfulness. It's about showing the world that even when people tried to bury you with lies, God resurrected you with truth. That even when the crowd cheered for your downfall, God lifted you in front of the same crowd. And He didn't do it behind closed doors. He did it in the open, because God isn't just interested in lifting you up. He's interested in using your life as a testimony. He wants the world to see what happens when someone chooses obedience over offense, purpose over pride, and faith over fear. You may have felt forgotten. You may have felt abandoned, overlooked, and judged. But God never stopped watching. He never took His eyes off you. In fact, the very moment they formed that circle of betrayal, God already began planning your comeback. Your name was on His lips. Your future was in His hands. And what they tried to silence, God is now amplifying. The same people who counted you out are being forced to watch as He counts you in. They have no choice but to witness the favor on your life. And don't think for one second that this vindication is about pride. It's not about showing off. It's about justice. It's about God proving that when you walk with Him, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, that no accusation has the final word over a life that is anchored in divine purpose. You didn't have to fight because God was fighting for you. You didn't have to chase validation because God was already validating you. And now your elevation is not only visible, it's undeniable. God is a God of recompense. He returns what was stolen. He restores what was lost. And when He does it openly. You don't have to hide your healing. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. What God is doing in your life will speak for itself. The blessings, the peace, the clarity, the increase, it will all be a testament to the fact that God saw your private pain and turned it into public honor. Let them watch. Let them talk. Let them remember who you were when they left, because the version of you they betrayed no longer exists. That version had to be broken, refined, and rebuilt in fire. And now what stands is a healed, whole, wiser vessel, ready for everything God has ordained. Their betrayal didn't destroy you. It ushered you into a deeper level of dependence on God. It pushed you into the arms of your Creator. It exposed your weakness, yes, but it also awakened your strength. You are not a victim of their betrayal. You are a vessel of God's glory. And your life is now a walking, breathing demonstration of what it looks like when someone refuses to let bitterness take root. You overcame the shame, you survived the silence, you walked through the fire, and now you shine. Not because you forced it, not because you pretended, but because God restored you in the presence of your enemies. Just like Psalm 23 declares, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. That was not poetic imagery. It was prophetic truth. God doesn't remove the enemies before He blesses you. He lets them stay so they can see what happens when they touch a child of destiny. The very circle that tried to shame you has become the audience for your unveiling. They can't deny your glow. They can't ignore your rise. And they'll never be able to explain it because it wasn't your doing, it was God. The hand of the Lord has lifted you, and what He lifts, no man can bring down. What He establishes, no lie can cancel. What He blesses, no circle of betrayal can undo. So walk boldly into your future. Walk knowing that God has the final say. Walk in the confidence of someone who has been vindicated by heaven itself. You don't have to prove anything. Your presence is proof. Your peace is proof. Your progress is proof. And now the world will watch as God continues to elevate you, not behind the scenes, but right in front of the very people who tried to bury your name. Because when God writes the last chapter, the betrayal becomes the backdrop to a victory no one saw coming. And you, chosen and called, are living proof that public betrayal always leads to public vindication when God is the author of your story.